All right. What's up, Ruth? How are you?
Doing good, Nick. Good to see
Good.
you.
Good to see you. Yeah, so we're just hitting record here. We're just having a little what we're calling Trek Talks, just catching up and sort of sharing what's going on in our lives to yeah, just share with the community and we're both we were just talking off mic, but Ruth and I were like we're both TFC pros, but we're also human beings and we also have we mess up and we're not perfect, and hopefully these conversations can help inspire people, or people can pull out sort of nuggets of wisdom. I was sharing to Ruth, my parents were just here, and they're both almost 80 years old, and I live in Costa Rica, and they live in a big city, New York City, and so they came down to Costa Rica, and I was sharing how they were really sort of struggling with some of the environment here in terms of just the sidewalks, or some of the chairs or couches or furniture were actually much lower than normal. And I was sharing how difficult it was for them, and it really it was a great like reminder for me that I have to continue to show up every day, to do the work, to give my body those inputs so that I don't get to a point where, I'm really struggling just to get in and out of a chair, or, up and down off of a sofa. And it really reminded me of that, the Katie Bowman stuff, Move Your DNA, which I'm sure a lot of people would be familiar with, just that idea of movement variability.
Mhm.
And, for my parents, they just don't have a good amount of movement variability. They're on sort of, hard sidewalks that are very clean and very sort of smooth and even. And then we get to Costa Rica and, it's uneven. There's gravelly roads, there's holes in the sidewalk, there's, 6-inch gaps on some of these sort of parts of the road where you have to sort of navigate over like a ditch, so it can be pretty challenging, and for them they really did struggle, and I think it really was because they weren't sort of providing they haven't been providing their body with those inputs, and we know that if you don't use it you lose it.
Mhm.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Ruth? And I think you probably have some stories of your own of elder relatives struggling with that same
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah. And I mean, something that you were touching on made me think like how a lot of times when we talk about moving, like, you know how we'll talk about the simplicity of just going for a 30-minute walk. Like Nick St. Louis always says, like, just get in a pair of natural shoes and then go for a walk. And if you have a long-term mindset, things will start to resolve and you'll have, just getting better inputs and then like nature. So when you were talking about your parents being in Costa Rica and like that walking in more natural kind of rugged surroundings, I was thinking about how like sometimes, we get lost in the weeds of like getting out in nature obviously is just so good for the spirit and your mindset and optical flow and your sight and everything. But I was thinking about how you were talking about like your parents and my parents and lots of people, and not just elderly people, are really accustomed to just walking on even flat ground, no variables in their movement patterns whatsoever. Usually a car to a parking lot to a business to concrete floors or whatever. But the nature part isn't just about like, oh, it's so great to get out in nature. It is because of all that variable ground, right? Like, so yes, nature is great for us, but most importantly is that you get all kinds of like interesting inputs because of unlevel ground and leaves and sounds and all these inputs that come that require you to move your body in various ways. And I was just thinking about how like we end up in the Katie Bowman style having to like recreate some kind of inputs in an artificial environment, which is kind of what we're doing with balance beams and all the fun things that we're trying to do, right? With our hacky sacks and stuff, is create in kind of our home environments, which is sort of an artificial environment. Like how can we move in a variety of ways all the time, which is also the reason why we have experiments with ground living, getting up and down on the ground, sitting differently if you can't sit less. And so I guess like there's a part of me that's like when I was growing up, you know, I don't know, I don't want to be called a hippie because like I came from a family of like hippies. And so as I was growing up, it's like it's not just about the hippie lifestyle or whatever. It's about like how we move our bodies that doesn't have anything to do with like cultural identity, you know? So, and then to relate to what you were saying, like whenever you get out of your normal environment, which is your home environment, your work environment, you go on vacation or what have you, you are faced with new, interesting environments. And so my family are the same as yours. And I was telling Nick the story before we started recording when he was talking about his parents. All these flashbacks came where I made this commitment to myself that as I grew older, I wasn't going to like let my body not have interesting in a variety of inputs because we were in a very well paved area in Seattle on a family trip walking around. But because my aunt hadn't doesn't do that on a regular basis, even though for her age she probably would seem fairly fit, just walking and looking, and then just stepped off a curb funny and face planted into the ground. And then my father-in-law is like limping around the city, and it's just you can't enjoy your life as much, right? So in the middle of a family day going to see the Space Needle, we had to take an emergency room trip so Auntie could have her face stitched up. And it was all because we don't have those regular inputs. So when you don't get to enjoy the quality of your life that you've probably worked really hard to create for your family, right? So anyway, that was a windy way of just going down this like idea, the going down the path of what does that mean for my life? Like how I don't, it's sad to see your parents not enjoy their lives, if, I mean, and that's judgmental because they probably are enjoying themselves. Another thing I was
Yeah.
saying to Nick is that if what you want to do with your body is like sit in Ireland in the fog and sit by a fireplace and have yourself a brandy and read all day, that's certainly your prerogative. That sounds really nice. And you wouldn't need those inputs. But if you want to be climbing trees at 90, then you got to like do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also brings up the question of like, I think a lot of people look to relatives or family members or parents and they think that like like those genetics are kind of like somehow destined, like that's going to be my reality. And I think for me, like it's a really good reminder that like the genetics, like of course we're given what we're given, we're dealt the hand that we're dealt. We can't do anything, we can't pick our parents. Like, and we also have like incredible ability to sort of like carve our own path given what we've been given, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes back to all the lifestyle stuff that we talk about. And so I think there's been some cool twin studies around people with the same exact DNA but completely different lifestyle choices, and they end up with completely different bodies, different capacities, different cardiovascular fitness, movement quality, strength. So it's really like I don't know what like I would say it's like my intuition says it's like 20 to 40% genetics and then 40 to 60 lifestyle, but I've heard everything from 50-50, as far as like nature versus nurture. What are your thoughts on that, Ruth? You got a best guess?
Yeah, I don't because I don't know if this is me putting my head in the sand, but I don't buy into. I mean, yes, I have DNA that is inherited. At the same time, I'm like in the mindset that I also have the ability to express those genes. I'll give you an example. So they think my father, who he died when I was 14 years old, they think he may have had Huntington's chorea. So that
Hmm.
is a nerve disorder that is like you have a 50-50 chance of inheriting it. And that scared the shit out of me. But because my background is like I don't have like a real strong family tree in the sense of like I, I'm basically on my own. So I decided not to get tested for the gene. But I did in grad school. Um, I had some really great, I worked in a lab, had some great researchers in it. So I spoke to one of my professors who really knew about this subject. And I said, I'm not going to get tested, but can we like talk about this? And so we set up some sessions and I did show some symptoms, early symptoms that really scared me. I haven't thought about this in so long. Um, and I just decided to not do anything about it. and that if I had the gene, I would find out soon enough. So
Hmm.
I still don't know if I actually have the gene and like turned off with regards to genes, I believe that we can turn them on and off based on the way that we live and our mindsets and the way that we live. So I don't know if like some of the joint pain that I've experienced has, like has something to do with that, and like other little things. Like I have um, symptoms of vitiligo, which is like where there's white patches on your skin and certain joints and stuff, and that is like one of the symptoms of having that gene, but it never expressed. So I'm 56, and it's supposed to start showing up around 30s and 40s, and I decided not to get tested, and then I decided not to and then I just decided to take really good care of myself. And so far so good.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's a powerful message that like, yeah, even if we're given a bad hand, we can still do a lot to, you know, express our full capacity. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the message we want to instill for everybody. Um, and yeah, and I think the other piece too that made when you were talking about your trip, it was like how much of a if you don't take care of yourself and you get to a point, you're just going to be so much more dependent on others, and you're gonna sort of take away potentially the quality of their lives too. Like I don't think we really like the impact of our, when you really get to be like sick or handicapped, or I mean, I can share a little bit with when my parents were here, I felt just a little bit extra like more stressed because like you were saying, every sort of excursion or trip we took, I had to be kind of on high alert to make sure, or to be on sort of ready alert to if something was going to happen, a fall was going to take place, or sort of having to sort of put out extra effort to make sure that nothing happened. And I certainly wanted to do that, but I think it also, like, we don't realize how much it can impact others when people have to take care of you. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a yeah, again, it just comes back to a good reminder for me, and to show up every day, especially in the days that I don't necessarily want to.
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, I think for me, I want to be doing things in my 80s that requires a fit, healthy body. And I think that starts now, right? Or it starts, I think the sooner you can just set up yourself for that future, um, the better you'll be.
You know,
So
that
yeah,
I know we're probably going to wrap it up here, but I mean, it's just so true. And so that's why I always like to say, like, taking care of ourselves is not a selfish act. It's actually taking care of ourselves is a gift to the people who love us. And
yeah,
so I always used to sign off by saying thank you for taking care of yourself, because that takes care of us too. And I think that is just so true. Like, imagine if your parents and my family really did take an honest, earnest effort to change and take better care of themselves. What a joy that would be! Like happier, healthier, more laughter, less injury. So much better for the whole entire family and the whole cohort or the whole unit. You know. So it really
yeah,
is a gift to the world around you when we take care of ourselves. It's a gift to others. I forget about that sometimes.
yeah. It's almost like there's like an energetic opening there that allows for all this other possible stuff to expand it. But if we have to use that energy on sort of taking care of others, it gets
Yeah.
used up, right? So
And
it's
you
almost
can't,
like, yeah, it's they're leaving stuff on the table.
yeah, you said high alert. I mean, that's it,
Yeah,
right? So like you can't relax completely into like the pleasure of someone else's company if you're kind of in like a high alert nervous system fear mode a little bit. Even if
yeah,
it's really low level, or just watching.
yeah, yeah. That's it. Yeah, it disrupts the ability to connect, which ultimately, like, that's so much of this comes back to, right? It's like, how can we're so kind of disconnected
Mhm.
from nature, from ourselves, from others. right? So that anytime we get to connect with others, it really is a special moment and it is a gift.
Yeah.
So
I have neighbors downstairs that are in their 70s who are my friends, but they won't come upstairs and knock on my door, speaking of connection, because they can't navigate the 17 stairs to get to my door. They feel unsafe. So that's just another example.
yeah. All right. I think
All
that'll
right.
do it on this little Trek talk. Hope
Yeah.
you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing wisdom.
Yeah. We love to hear your thoughts if you listen to this too, or stories or feedback. Tell us about your Trek Talk.
Yeah, that's really our goal, is to just inspire you guys to record your own Trek talks, or yeah, let's engage and hear your perspectives. That would be really neat to
Yep.
continue this conversation. So, all right, we're gonna hit the uh hit the recording button to end this, but it's good to see everybody, and
Yep.
we'll see you guys soon. Ciao.